18th and 19th centuries, everyone in the new United States would have recognized these children. But as far as most Americans in the 21st century know, George Washington never had any children. Some may have read the words of George Washington's most famous eulogist. "Americans, he had no child but you, and he was all your own." Who, then, are these children? Who was Washington's family? It was a question I started asking over a decade ago when I first came across Washington family members in historic records. Clearly, I thought, what I needed was a family tree. As it turned out, this was no simple task. There were no comprehensive family trees online. With further digging, I located a Washington descendant who had compiled just what I was looking for: a massive family tree that showed all the descendants of George Washington's father. It arrived in the mail in a tall poster tube, and the document I opened stretched 5 feet long and 2 feet wide. The tree mapped out 10 children by 2 wives, 40 grandchildren, 130 great-grandchildren, and around 300 great-great-grandchildren. Sprawled out on the floor, I leaned down over the long document to read through the names. The children from the family portrait, who I had learned were Eleanor, Nelly, and George Washington Wash Custis, weren't there. The Custis children's names were absent for good reason. They were not blood-related to George Washington at all. They would only appear on a separate family tree for the Custis family, into which their grandmother, and future First Lady, Martha, had first married. Martha Dandridge had entered one of Virginia's wealthiest families when she wed Daniel Parke Custis in 1750. The pair had 4 children, but only the 2 youngest, John Jackie Parke Custis and Martha Patsy Parke Custis, survived past toddlerhood. When Daniel died suddenly in 1757, Martha became the wealthiest widow in the colony, a prime catch for a young man on the make like George Washington. George and Martha married in 1759, when George was almost 27 and Martha nearly 28. George's marriage to Martha propelled him into Virginia's upper gentry. Bringing his wife, her children, some of the 84 enslaved people she inherited, and her wealth to Mount Vernon, George expanded the house, inherited from his brother Lawrence, who died young, and profited off the labor of bondspeople to make his estate productive. Martha maintained her role as the primary parent, with the often absent George as a stern but loving stepfather to Jackie and Patsy Custis. Jackie was, his stepfather said, a boy of good genius, but he was a lazy student who George lamented was more interested in dogs, horses, and guns than learning. Jackie dropped out of one school after another. His sister Patsy had to stay close to home because she suffered from seizures, which her parents did everything they could to treat. Nonetheless, their sweet, innocent girl, as George called her, died after a fit in 1773 at only 17. Soon after, Jackie married, against his stepfather's advice, who felt the 20-year-old Jackie was too immature and irresponsible, a young Maryland woman named Eleanor Calvert. Eleanor and Jackie had 7 children, 4 of whom survived, before Jackie died suddenly in 1781. Elizabeth, Eliza, Martha, Patty, Nelly, and Wash Custis, then, were, in today's parlance, George Washington's step-grandchildren. While Americans in the 18th and early 19th centuries did not use the language of step-families, such blended families were quite common due to high death and remarriage rates. With 4 children aged 5 or under on her hands, Eleanor Calvert Custis might well have been overwhelmed. Martha, missing having children in the house, offered to take Nelly and Wash and raise them at Mount Vernon with George. This would not have been unusual at the time, and Eleanor and her elder daughters lived close by and visited regularly. There was as of yet no legal form of adoption, but people referred to Nelly and Wash as George's adopted children. Nonetheless, this was also a time when blood relationships were central to legal definitions of family and inheritance. Thus, George Washington could essentially adopt 2 children and raise them as his own, but have no children. Indeed, while never having any biological children of their own, George and Martha raised